are now listening to On One Radio, the talk show podcast station, bringing you the current events and issues. All information and resources are based on the opinions of the host unless otherwise noted. This podcast may contain some quotations, images, and/or excerpts from copyright material. These uses fall well within the copyright doctrine of fair use. This is the News Report, and I am your host, Tony. Welcome, Terminal listeners, and all of my day ones, and welcome. This is Let's Talk's News Report, and I am your host, Tony. Now, if you're watching the news, this election and everything else has been crazy, absolutely bananas. Some people are happy, some are not, but it is what it is. And today's report is on Donald Trump and all the lawsuits brought against him. And you guys are always free to give me some feedback. Let me know how you feel about the situation, especially on this one. So let's get right into it. State attorneys general have sued Trump administration 138 times. And that's actually almost double those of Obama as well as Bush. Now, it's routine for attorney generals to sue the federal government, but experts are saying that the sharp rise signifies the growing partisan and legal divide with Washington. Now, during President Donald Trump's 4 years in office, his administration has sparred in court with state attorneys generals over nearly every issue. I mean, it crosses so many different topics, from travel ban, deferred action for childhood arrivals programs, family separations, as far as the U.S.-Mexico border, the national emergency, which was the declaration to build the border wall. I mean, you have international student visas, student loan protections, clean water rules. I mean, transgender healthcare protections, automobile emissions, citizenships. I mean, and it goes on and on. So, I mean, it seems like it's a lot. Well, it is. Now, a review of litigation against federal agencies during the Trump administration shows that state attorneys general have filed 138 multi-state lawsuits since he took office. Now, that's according to the data compiled by Paul Nolet, a political scientist at Marquette University in Milwaukee, who studies the Office of Attorney General. So it's a very sharp increase from Trump's predecessors. And, that of course that includes Barack Obama. His administration was sued 78 times during his 2 presidential terms, as well as George W. Bush, whose administration was sued 76 times during his 2 terms. So the number of AG lawsuits is off the charts. These days, they're really ready to go once the regulation is finalized. Within a week, sometimes within a day or two. The lawsuits filed, they're ready with it. So, I mean, what does that say? I mean, it really speaks volumes if you think about it. It means something is not right and someone is trying to get it straightened out, is what that means. Now, the vast majority of the lawsuits were filed by states with Democratic Attorney General, which is a reversal from the mostly Republican Attorney General who sued the Obama administration. Only 6 lawsuits against the Trump administration involved a Republican Attorney General. Now, California's Democratic Attorney General Xavier Becerra has been part of the most multi-state lawsuits. Massachusetts Attorney General Maura Healey, a Democrat whose state has been a plaintiff in dozens of cases against the Trump administration. Now, he stated the White House adopted extreme positions that, in her view, flouted laws and required consistent action. And it was stated we had to be there under his administration as the president, and his enablers engaged in conduct that was illegal and unconstitutional and did harm to residents of our state, said Healey. A co-chair of the Democratic Attorney Generals Association, which supports the Democratic Attorneys Generals of 24 states and Washington, D.C. Now, Republican Attorneys General represent 26 states. Some have accused Democratic Attorney Generals of choosing legal arguments on the basis of political partyism. Now, the fact that the Democrats have filed over twice as many lawsuits against Trump in just 4 years than the Republicans filed against Obama over 8 years makes it clear the Democrats are using the courts to play politics, says Kelly Blacko, National Press Secretary for the Republican Attorney Generals Association, who seeks to get more Republicans elected to the position. Now, I'm going to stop right there for a second because it seems that either way, it's looking like politics is being played. Whether it's Democrats or Republicans, it seems that both parties are bringing in political views. It's like a political war zone around the United States, seriously. Because even Kelly Blacko, the National Press Secretary, seeks to get more Republicans elected to the position. And that's pretty much simply to sway it back toward the Republicans. So isn't that the same thing? It's like tit for tat, basically. Which is not cool at all, but it is taking place. Now, during the Trump administration, the Environmental Protection Agency has been sued the most of any federal agency, 47 times, and it was a frequent target during previous administrations as well. So the chief legal officers have a range of powers at their disposal and mandates to protect their state's rights, enforce their laws, and defend consumers, which helps explain why they have clashed so often legally and politically with the Trump administration. The AGs have really come into their own, Nolet stated. They're taking full advantage of their institutional power, and since AGs have a great deal of independence, they can do so without being tied by the governor or state legislators, which means they can prioritize what they want. Okay, so as I was saying before, and Nolet basically just stated the case. They can pretty much prioritize what they want. Either party. So where does that really leave the consumers, the American people? Now, one of the earliest multi-state lawsuits filed during the Trump administration included Democratic Attorney Generals of 16 states and the District of Columbia, who asked the 4th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals in Richmond, Virginia, to uphold a ruling that blocked a major part of the so-called travel ban, which sought to suspend immigration into the U.S. from some predominantly Muslim countries. The case was tied up in the courts, and the Attorney General were supported by federal rulings invalidating or scaling back versions of the ban. Ultimately, the issue reached the Supreme Court, which upheld the travel restrictions in a 5-4 ruling, praised by Trump. Trump stated at the time that it was a tremendous victory and that this ruling is also a moment of profound vindication. But according to Nolet, Trump hasn't often succeeded in the courts, and state attorney generals have won 79% of their lawsuits, with about 60 more still undecided. Nolet also stated that attorney generals have the benefit in multi-state suits of deciding which district court to file in and potentially get the most favorable ruling from a judge, a process known as forum shopping. But hold on one second. They're not the only ones that do this. This kind of gets done in so many other legal avenues and different situations from criminal on down. So it's almost like everybody's complaining about the same rights and privileges that they have to do what they feel is necessary. So again, I ask, where does that leave America? But I digress, moving on. For instance, Democrat attorney generals might seek to file suits in the District of Northern California and Southern New York, whereas during the Obama administration, their Republican counterparts have often chose Texas. Now, Trump and his Republican allies, meanwhile, have overhauled the federal judiciary at a brisk pace by installing more than 150 district judges over the past 4 years to fill post-Obama vacancies, as well as ensuring that the Supreme Court titled more conservatively. While Trump continues to challenge the results of his run for re-election against Democrat Joe Biden, the projected winner, observers expect outstanding lawsuits against the Trump administration to be temporarily halted. Why? Well, because President-elect Biden has promised to unwind many of Trump's policies. New York Attorney General Letitia James, a Democrat, said last month that her office was already preparing a list of legal actions to aid Biden's team. Ultimately, pending lawsuits filed by Democratic attorney generals against the Trump administration could be dismissed should the Biden administration change policies in their favor. But new lawsuits are expected to be filed by Republican attorneys generals trying to stop Democrats from reversing those policies. Now, last week, the Republican Attorneys General Association tapped Attorney General Chris Carr of Georgia, Eric Schmidt of Missouri, and Steve Marshall of Alabama for leadership roles in 2021. The Republican attorneys generals are preparing to be first on the front lines against a possible Biden-Harris administration in order to defend the rule of law and protect unconstitutional freedoms for future generations, Laco stated. Now, Greg Zoller, a Republican who was Indiana's Attorney General from 2009 to 2017, stated the dysfunction of the legislative branch was a big reason Obama pushed through executive orders and administrative rules of his own, which alarmed Republican attorneys generals. He goes on to state, his frustration with a deadlocked Congress was understandable, but it raised obvious constitutional questions, he stated. While Zoller joined multi-state lawsuits against the Obama administration, he also sidestepped legal actions sought by Mike Pence, then the governor of Indiana, when he didn't think a challenge could be successful in court. So that's also picking and choosing. There was also criticism that the legal challenges were political and based on policy differences, Zoller continued. My response to media and to my Democrat AG colleagues was that they might rue the day when a Republican president would wield executive authority using similar logic. The past 4 years are a testament to what I warned of at the time. Now, James Tierney, a Democrat former Attorney General of Maine, who is now a lecturer at Harvard Law School, said Trump has largely himself to blame for the flurry of lawsuits after he used executive orders and other directives to push his agenda, often bypassing Congress and administrative laws. So, depending on what President Biden does, and more importantly, how he does it, GOP AGs can be expected to sue. Now, how often and to what degree of success will depend on what President Biden actually does, which makes it, which can be a bit more confusing for a lot of people who are not into politics or don't have a big understanding about what is going on. Politics really is important to a certain degree, and at the same time, just basically paying attention to what's going on, because either way it leans, U.S. citizens are affected, because all this is really about our rights as consumers as well as citizens. These are the people that we are electing to speak for us and to do our bidding, basically. And we have to keep in mind that we are the people. So who we vote in really does matter. Because who we vote in gets to decide and determine how things are done. Whether they do it legally or illegally, either way there are consequences, good or bad. So we must be vigilant in checking out who we vote in, because these are the people who are speaking up for us. And we have to be aware of any hidden agendas that they may have. And that's a Democrat or Republican. Because whether we realize it or not, they're all human. They all make mistakes. They can all be swayed. And in some cases, people and their loyalty can be bought and sold at the drop of a dime. So we really have to be vigilant and know what's going on. So that's why when these political things take place, these lawsuits and everything, we do need to be aware, because it does affect, it's a ripple effect, and it affects everyone. And that's even if you realize it or not. Laws change very frequently, and when things are done illegally, it creates more problems. It's windfalls for others, and for the consumers and the citizens, it can be a big downfall. So we need to know what's going on. And I'm just waiting to see which way the wind blows with this thing. And when I know something, you guys will know something as well. But the Trump administration has been pretty much sued the most out of everybody. And there's a reason for that. So let's just pay attention to who we elect, because these are the people who are speaking for us and making decisions on our behalf. You have been listening to On One Radio, the talk show podcast station, bringing you the current events and issues. Thank you for taking the time to listen to my news report.